Hello and welcome to another episode of Short and Sweet Adobe Training. Today we're going to be looking at Photoshop, and in particular we're going to be using the pen tool to cut around an object, and then from then we'll create a selection from that path that we've made with the pen tool, and then from that selection we will create a mask so that we can create some transparency on the layer above to reveal the layer below. So we'll end up finishing off the document and it'll look like this image that we've got here on screen. If I show you the working files, I'll come across and you can see here this is the geometric shape that I'll be using the pen tool around the outside of and on the inside. And then we've got our texture layer that we'll be placing the image into, or the shape on top of. So we'll start off by placing that object. If I come up to File and then scroll down to Place, I can then navigate to the shape file, just double click on that and it places it into the document, and if I hit return or enter, it then positions that, and it's now that I come across and grab the pen tool. So over here on my toolbar, this is the pen tool we have here. Now before I start using the pen tool, I can come up to my control panel along the top here and check that my setting for the tool mode is set to path, and that also over here my path operations is combine shapes. So I'll be tracing around this particular object and I want to create a closed path when doing that. So starting from the top left here, I'm just going to click and release once to drop an anchor point, and if I come across and click and release to drop another anchor point here, come down here and click and release to drop anchor points along here. There's a number of ways you could select this background, but I wanted to demonstrate how the pen tool works or can be used to create closed paths that can be turned into selections. Right, so to finish this shape off, I can hover over this first anchor point that I drew, and as you can see I get that little circle there telling me that I've now made a closed path. Alright, so that's the outside of the shape done. I now need to move into the inside and cut around this area because I don't want any of that white being revealed when I make the mask. So before I do that, I need to come up to the control panel and click on my little drop down here from the path operations and choose subtract front shape, because this path I want to subtract from the path that I just drew. So starting down here in the lower left corner, click and release to drop that anchor. Click and release to drop this anchor up here, one down here, and then finishing it off by hovering over this first anchor point, clicking and releasing, and I've now made that inside shape. So the next step is to create a path from these, create a selection from these paths that I've created. And I can do that in one of two ways. I can come up to my control panel and click on the Make Selection button in the control panel, or I can come across to my Paths palette. If I click on that Paths palette, you can see that I've got a working path sitting there that represents the path I've just created, or the paths that I've just created. And if I scroll down here to the bottom of the Paths panel, I can click on this little button here, which is Make Path a Selection. So if I click and release on that, you can see I've now got my marching ants to denote that this path is now a selection. It's a little bit out. I probably should have gone in and tidied the path up a little bit before I made that selection, but you get the point. Alright, so the next step, now that I've created that selection, is to create a mask from that selection. And the way that I do that is from my Layers panel. So I'll come across, click on the Layers panel here to reveal the layers. So I've got my geometric shape layer above, and then down the bottom here I've got my Create Layer Mask button. So once I click on the Add Layer Mask button, there we have it. It has made a mask and removed that white background based on the selection that I had created. So those steps were: 1, create the outside path; 2, create the inside path; 3, then turn that path into a selection; and then 4, make a mask from that selection. I hope you found this introduction to using the pen tool to create masks helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next Photoshop tutorial from Short and Sweet.